The town of Ash Hollow baked under the sun like it had sinned. The streets shimmered with heat and the dust rose in slow swirls that clung to boots and bad reputations. Wagons creaked past the saloon, where a painted sign swung lazily in the wind reading the Copper Star. Inside, laughter sounded too loud for a place so tired. It was a town that had seen more broken promises than prayers. And on that particular afternoon, when the horizon burned white and the wind carried whispers from the canyon, Sheriff Cole Brennan stepped out of his office and squinted toward trouble. She came walking down the main road like she owned every man's heartbeat, a girl in a red calico dress, the color nearly bleeding against the pale dust. Her boots were scuffed, her hat tilted, her dark hair pinned with a comb shaped like a rose, the kind of woman who made men stop what they were doing, not just because of her looks, but because she carried herself like someone who'd lost everything once and didn't plan to again. Cole had seen plenty of women in his years, gamblers' widows, preachers' daughters gone wild, the kind who sold comfort for whiskey. But there was something different in the way this one walked. She didn't hurry. She didn't shy. When she reached the watering trough near the livery, she knelt, cupped her hands, and let the cool water run down her wrists like she was washing away a sin. "New in town?" Cole called, voice steady but curious. The woman looked up. Her eyes were green as a snake's and soft as spring grass, two things that didn't belong together. "You could say that," she said, standing slowly. "Didn't plan on staying, but the road's longer than it looks." "Road always is," Cole replied. He stepped down from the boardwalk, dust crunching under his boots. His badge glinted, catching her gaze for just a second too long. She gave a crooked smile. "Didn't mean to draw the law's attention. Wouldn't call it that," he said, voice low. "Just not often we see a woman like you come walking into Ash Hollow with no wagon, no man, and no fear." "Fear's expensive," she said softly, brushing her hands on her skirt. "I ran out of coin a long time ago." Cole studied her, but before he could speak, the saloon doors banged open. The piano man coughed up a sour tune, and a drunk stumbled out yelling something about the new girl who'd just dropped her drawers in the street to wash herself. The words twisted through the air like a rattlesnake hiss, and Cole's hand brushed the butt of his gun without thinking. Lila Mae didn't flinch. She turned her head slow, her eyes finding the drunk, and said in a voice that carried like thunder before a storm, "You got dirt on your mouth, mister. Maybe wash it before you talk about a lady." The man laughed, mean and slurred, but Cole's stare stopped him cold. "Go sleep it off," the sheriff said, "before you find trouble sober." The drunk spat near his boots and shuffled away, cursing under his breath. When Cole turned back, the woman was watching him. Not grateful, not coy, just curious. "You always play hero for strangers?" she asked. "Only when they're outnumbered," he said. She smiled again, that half smile that seemed to know too much. "Name's Lila Mae, and you, lawman?" "Brennan." "Cole Brennan." She tilted her head. "You sound like you've said that 1,000 times to people who didn't remember it after a week." "Maybe," he said, "but I reckon you will." The silence stretched between them, heavy, warm, full of something neither of them wanted to name. A horse snorted nearby. The saloon's laughter returned, muffled behind walls of smoke and whiskey. Lila finally turned, started walking toward the Copper Star. Cole found himself watching her the way a man watches lightning, knowing it's beautiful, knowing it'll burn him. Inside, she stepped up to the bar. The place went quiet. The barkeep, a wiry man named Stokes, wiped his hands on a rag. "Don't serve trouble here, miss," he said. Lila leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Then pour me something sweet, sugar. Maybe I'll change your luck." The piano started again, soft and slow. Cole lingered at the door, watching her move. The way she laughed too easily. The way the men leaned closer without realizing they were falling. That night, Ash Hollow felt different. The lamps seemed to burn longer. The wind hummed through the shutters like it was remembering a song. Cole sat outside his office, cigarette glowing between his fingers, and watched the upstairs window of the Copper Star. Shadows moved across the curtain, her silhouette among them. He told himself he wasn't interested. That women like Lila Mae didn't settle, didn't stay, didn't want men with badges and regrets. But when she came out near midnight, boots whispering in the dust, and looked up at him with that same quiet defiance, he knew he was already lost. "Still awake, Sheriff?" she asked. "Someone's got to keep watch," he said. "Against what?" He looked past her toward the horizon where the stars blurred in the heat. Against everything that don't belong, Lila stepped closer. The lamplight caught her face, tired, beautiful, unafraid. "Then I guess you'll be watching me." For a moment, neither spoke. Then she smiled that dangerous smile and walked away toward the boarding house, her scent of rose and whiskey lingering in the air. Cole exhaled slow, the kind of breath a man takes when he knows he's in trouble. And somewhere deep in the shadows of Ash Hollow, a coyote howled. Low, mournful, like it already knew how this story would end. By the next week, everyone in Ash Hollow knew her name. Lila May. It was on the lips of men at the saloon and in the gossip of women hanging laundry on the line. They said she came from somewhere down south, maybe Texas, maybe nowhere at all. They said she'd once been married to a man who vanished after the war, or that she'd shot him herself. Every tale was different, but everyone ended the same. Trouble follows beauty like dust follows boots. Cole heard it all. He'd walk into the general store and feel the eyes on his back, the way conversation stopped when he passed. He didn't care much for talk, never had. But it was different when the talk was about her. Because every word they said was half a lie, and the other half hurt more than it should have. Most nights he found himself outside the Copper Star, not because he meant to, but because that's where her laughter lived. The kind of laugh that rolled through smoke and piano notes and made you forget for a second that the world was rough and cruel. She'd sing sometimes too, soft ballads from Louisiana or old river songs that carried out into the night. Cole would stand in the street with his hat low and listen until she stopped. Then one night he went inside. The place went quiet the moment the sheriff crossed the threshold. Lila was on the small stage, her hands resting on the microphone stand like it was a secret. She saw him pause just a beat too long, then smiled. That slow, knowing smile that could stop a storm. "This one's for the lawmen who don't know he's got a heart left," she said. The piano man looked at her funny, but she just nodded for him to play. And when she started singing, low, smoky, and trembling, Cole felt like every word was a match to the dry wood inside him. When it ended, no one clapped. The silence felt sacred. Cole stood there, jaw tight, hat in his hands, before walking up to her. "Didn't figure you for the type to call a man out in front of a crowd," he said quietly. Lila's eyes gleamed. "Didn't figure you for the type to hide from one woman, Sheriff." That earned her a few chuckles from the room, but Cole didn't flinch. He just said, "Well, step outside with me." Outside, the air was cooler. The moon hung low over the black hills, turning the town silver. Lila crossed her arms, waiting. "You shouldn't put yourself in folks' sights like that," he said. "They'll twist your words, make you their story." "Then maybe I'll give 'em a story worth talking about," she said. "Is that what you came here for?" Her gaze softened, but her voice stayed steady. "I came here to stop running." Cole studied her, the way her hair caught the light, the faint scar near her collarbone she didn't bother to hide. "From what?" "From a man who wanted to own me," she whispered. "And from the woman I had to be to get away." Something inside Cole shifted. The law had taught him to measure people by deeds and records, not by ghosts. But standing there under the moonlight, with Lila's voice trembling against the quiet, he realized she wasn't a mystery to be solved. She was a wound trying to heal. He wanted to say something gentle. Instead, he said, "You can stay here. Nobody'll touch you while I wear this badge." She looked up, eyes glinting with something almost tender. "Careful, Sheriff. That sounds an awful lot like a promise, and maybe it is." The silence stretched again. Then she reached up, fingers brushing his cheek, just once, like testing fire. "You're a good man, Cole Brennan. That's the dangerous kind." Before he could speak, she turned and walked back into the saloon, leaving him with the echo of her perfume, roses and dust. After that night, things changed. Cole started finding reasons to walk down the street past the Copper Star. He'd stop by the post office just as Lila came out from the milliner's. He'd help her carry water, mend a broken fence near her rented cabin by the creek. At first it was small talks about the heat, the coyotes, the price of coffee. Then it became quieter things. His years as a Union scout, the scar on her wrist from when she learned to shoot, the dreams neither of them had dared to speak aloud. The town kept whispering. Folks saw them at the river one evening, sitting too close while the sun went down. Others swore they saw her leave his office after dark. Some said the sheriff had gone soft. Others said he'd finally found what he'd been missing. Cole tried not to care, but every time he saw her smile fade when someone whispered her name, it hit him harder. One night, he went to her cabin late when even the dogs were quiet. She was sitting on the porch barefoot, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "You shouldn't be here, Cole," she murmured. "Maybe not," he said, taking off his hat. "But I'm tired of pretending I ain't." She looked at him for a long time, the kind of look that sees a man's past, not just his face. Then she said softly, "You know what they'll say?" "They already have." She smiled faintly. "Then come sit, Sheriff. Might as well give them a good reason." He sat beside her, their shoulders barely touching. The crickets sang. The river murmured somewhere beyond the pines. For the first time in a long while, Cole felt peace. But peace don't last in Ash Hollow. It never did. Because in the dark beyond the ridge, someone else was watching. A rider with a black hat and a grudge older than mercy. The kind of man who remembered debts. And when he saw Lila Mae laughing softly with the lawman, his hand tightened around the reins. By the time dawn broke, the wind was already carrying the scent of gunpowder waiting to happen. 3 days later, a storm rolled in from the south, the kind that made the sky bruise purple and the air smell like metal. The townsfolk hurried to shutter windows and bring in horses, but the sheriff stood on the boardwalk, hat low, watching the horizon. He could feel it before he saw it, that restless shift in the wind that whispered trouble. By dusk, the first rider appeared. A lone figure on a black stallion riding hard through the mud, long coat snapping like a flag. The town quieted as he came. The piano stopped mid-tune. Dogs went silent. The man reined up in front of the saloon, boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. He was tall, broad, with eyes sharp as flint and a face that had seen too many bad decisions. His voice carried like gravel over glass when he said, "I'm looking for a woman. Calls herself Lila Mae." Cole's hand went to his holster before he even realized it. "And who might you be to her?" The stranger turned, and when he smiled, it wasn't kind. "Husband." A murmur ran through the crowd. Lila was standing in the saloon doorway now, her face pale but unflinching. "You're not my husband, Wade," she said, voice steady. "You gave that up the night you left me for dead." The man's grin widened. "Ah, so you do remember." He took a step closer. "Ain't often a woman shoots her man and lives to tell it." The air grew heavy. Cole moved between them, badge catching the dying light. "You'll keep your distance," he warned. Wade's eyes slid to the badge, then back to Lila. "You shacked up with the law now?" "That's rich." "She's under my protection," Cole said. "That so?" Wade spat in the dirt. "You got a warrant saying that, lawman?" Cole didn't answer. His silence said everything. The outlaw chuckled low. "Didn't think so. Don't worry, Sheriff. I ain't here for her hide. Just something she took from me." "I didn't take nothing," Lila said. "Didn't you?" Wade's tone turned slick, venomous. "I'd say a bullet in the gut and a horse gone missing count for something." Cole stepped closer, his voice like thunder before the strike. "You best mount up and ride out. Ain't no room in Ash Hollow for old ghosts." Wade smirked. "You sure about that? Looks to me like one standing right behind you." And with that, he brushed past and pushed through the saloon doors, leaving the town in stunned silence. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. The wind howled through the cracks in the office wall, carrying the sound of rain and the distant cry of coyotes. He sat by the window, gun in his lap, thinking of her. The way she'd stood her ground unshaken, even with the devil himself breathing down her neck. Near midnight, the door creaked open. Lila slipped inside, her shawl soaked with rain. "He won't leave," she whispered. I figured, her hands trembled. "He's not after money, Cole. He wants to finish what he started." Cole rose, the floorboards creaking. "Then he'll have to go through me first." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "You don't know what he's capable of." "I don't need to," he said. "Just what I'm capable of." She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "You're not a killer, Cole. Don't make yourself one for me." He wanted to say he didn't care, that some things were worth breaking for, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he reached out, brushed the wet hair from her face, and whispered, "Then we leave. Tonight." Lila froze. "Leave Ash Hollow?" "Yeah, head north. There's a stage in the morning. We can ride till the tracks disappear." Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "You'd really do that?" "I'd hang up this badge if it meant keeping you safe." For a moment her eyes softened, the storm outside forgotten. She reached up, touched his cheek, and said, Sweet Jesus, Cole Brennan. You really are trouble. They stood like that, close enough to feel the other's heartbeat, until lightning flashed through the window. A gunshot followed, shattering the glass beside them. Cole grabbed her, pushing her to the floor. The bullet buried itself in the wall. Another shot rang out. Then silence. He crawled to the window, saw only the rain and the faint shadow of a horse disappearing behind the livery. He's watching, Cole muttered. He's playing with us. By morning, the town buzzed with tension. Folks whispered in corners. Doors stayed locked. Wade hadn't been seen again, but everyone could feel him, like a rattler coiled under the porch waiting. Cole posted a deputy by the saloon and another near the stage depot. He told Lila to stay in her cabin, but she refused. He'll come when I'm alone, she said. That's what he does. So she went back to the Copper Star that evening, dressed in black silk, a rose pinned in her hair. When Cole saw her step onto that stage again, singing through the fear like a woman already saying goodbye, something inside him broke. He pushed through the crowd and stood in the back, hand resting on his holster, eyes never leaving her. The song ended. The piano went silent. And that's when Wade stepped out from the shadows, gun drawn, smile sharp. You always did love an audience, he said. The crowd scattered. Cole shouted her name, but the noise drowned it out. Wade's gun lifted. Lila's hand went for her own. She was fast, but not faster. The shot echoed. Then another. Smoke filled the air. Someone screamed. When the dust settled, Wade was on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Lila stood trembling, the revolver falling from her hand. Cole rushed to her, catching her before she could collapse. I didn't mean... She gasped. I didn't... Shh, he said, holding her close. It's over. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't. Because in the eyes of the law, she'd just become a killer again. And in the eyes of the town, the sheriff had just chosen love over justice. Outside, the storm finally broke, washing the blood into the street. But nothing could wash away what they'd done. The morning after the gunfight, Ash Hollow smelled of wet wood and silence. Wade was buried behind the church with no name carved on the cross. No preacher spoke over him, just the wind howling through the empty hills. The town wanted to forget, but forgetting is hard when the blood's still fresh on the street. Cole stood by the grave until the sun burned high, his jaw locked tight. The law said he should have arrested Lila. The man inside him said he'd die first. When he finally walked back through town, eyes followed him from behind curtains and cracked doors. Whispers clung to him like dust. The sheriff's gone soft. The woman's cursed. That's what happens when you bet a ghost. He ignored them all until he reached the Copper Star. The saloon was quiet, chairs stacked, air heavy with the stale smell of whiskey and fear. Lila sat at a table near the window, her hair unpinned, her eyes hollow. I thought you'd be gone by now, she said softly. Where would I go? She looked at him, tired and beautiful. Anywhere the law ain't breathing down your neck. Cole sat across from her, placing his hat on the table. Lila, there's a marshal riding in from Dodge, word's already spread. They'll be asking questions, so I'll tell them the truth. He shook his head. Truth don't matter to men who make their living by the rope. Her hands clenched in her lap. You'd lie for me? I'd burn this whole damn town down for you, he said quietly. But that ain't what you deserve. Tears glimmered in her eyes. You think I deserve peace, Cole? That ain't in my cards. He reached across, covered her hand with his. Then maybe I'll change the deck. They sat there in the half-light. Two people who knew the world had already made its decision, but didn't care enough to stop loving anyway. By sundown, the marshal arrived, Marshal Tully Briggs, a man built of iron and whiskey, with a badge older than his conscience. He tied his horse outside the office and nodded once at Cole. Heard you got a killer in your town, he said, voice like gravel. Cole met his stare. She defended herself. Law don't see it that way. Maybe it should. Briggs spat in the dirt. Ain't your call, Sheriff. Hand her over. Cole didn't move. You'll have to go through me. The marshal studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Don't do this, Brennan. You've got a good record. Don't throw it away for a woman with blood on her hands. Cole's jaw tightened. You ever been in love, Marshal? Briggs paused. Once. Then you understand why I can't. Briggs's eyes softened, almost pitying. Then I'll give you till dawn. He turned, walking back toward the boarding house. After that, I come with irons. That night, Ash Hollow felt like it was holding its breath. The wind died and the lamps burned low. Lila sat in her cabin, packing what little she had, a comb, a locket, a torn photograph of a man she'd once loved and later feared. Cole stood by the door watching her. "You could still go," he said. "Ride east, maybe make it to the river before dawn. And what about you?" "I'll buy you time," she shook her head. "You can't fight the law, Cole. You are the law." He looked at her, really looked, and in her eyes saw the truth he'd been avoiding. She was right. But knowing didn't change the way his heart burned when she said his name. She stepped close, her voice trembling. "You saved me once. Don't damn yourself trying to do it again." He reached for her, his hand trembling as it touched her face.
"Lila Mae?"
She pressed her forehead to his, tears falling silent. "If there's another life after this one, maybe we'll get it right." He kissed her then, slow, desperate, full of everything they couldn't say. The kind of kiss that feels like both a promise and a goodbye. When he pulled away, she whispered a "Go, Cole, before I make you stay." But he didn't. Outside, thunder rolled again. No storm this time, just the echo of hooves. The marshal and his men were coming. Lila grabbed her bag, but Cole stopped her. "You can't outrun this," he said. "Watch me." She pushed past him, running into the night. Cole followed, shouting her name. The lamps flickered as they passed, the town waking to chaos. Down near the stables, Briggs and 2 deputies rode in. "Stop her!" one yelled. Lila turned, her gun flashing in the dark. A shot cracked the night, then another. Horses reared. Someone screamed. Cole drew his weapon but froze when he saw her, standing in the middle of the road, hair wild, tears shining like glass. "Don't let them take me, Cole," she cried. He raised his hand, trying to calm her. "Put it down, Lila, please, don't make them shoot." Briggs shouted, "Drop it or she dies." Cole stepped forward, arms out. "She's done enough dying, Marshal. You want justice? Take me." The deputies hesitated. Lila stared at him, shaking. "You'd really trade yourself?" He nodded. "Ain't nothing left in me worth saving if they take you." For a second, everything went still. No wind, no sound, just the two of them in the lamplight. Then Lila's hand trembled, her gun lowering. "I love you, Cole Brennan," she said. Before he could answer, a shot rang out. She fell hard, her dress blooming red, the bag slipping from her hand. Cole caught her before she hit the dirt, his voice breaking. "No, no, stay with me." Her fingers brushed his cheek one last time. "Told you," she whispered, "I was trouble." And then she was gone. The marshal lowered his smoking gun, face pale. She went for her pistol," he stammered. But Cole didn't hear. He just held her close, rocking gently as the town watched in silence. When dawn came, the streets were quiet again, and smoke from the lanterns curled like ghosts above the rooftops. Cole stood there, badge glinting, hands stained with the memory of her. Ash Hollow had seen death before, but never like this. And as the sun rose over the empty horizon, the sheriff who'd once kept the peace finally broke it. He turned, tore the badge from his chest and threw it into the dust beside her blood. The dawn after her death came soft, almost merciful, the kind of light that made you forget for a heartbeat how cruel the night had been. But Ash Hollow didn't wake easy that morning. The air hung heavy with smoke and sorrow. The saloon doors swung quietly in the wind, and the church bell, cracked from a storm years ago, rang once, then fell silent again. Cole Brennan didn't sleep. Couldn't. He sat where he'd been all night, in the dirt outside the boarding house, hat in his hands, her shawl across his knees. The blood had dried dark on his shirt, stiff and cold. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her falling again. The flash of red, the way her lips formed his name as the bullet found her heart. People began to gather by mid-morning. The undertaker, Mr. Graves, spoke softly about arrangements. The marshal said words he thought would sound like comfort, but didn't. Cole just stared past them all, his voice low and flat when he finally said, "She'll rest out near the creek." She liked the sound of water. No one argued. No one dared. By noon, they carried her out of town. Just Cole, the undertaker, and a handful of women who'd known her from the Copper Star. The river glinted faintly in the sun, and the air smelled of sage and rain. They laid her beneath a cottonwood tree, where wildflowers tangled in the roots. Cole dug the grave himself. Every shovel of earth felt like a confession. When it was done, he took off his badge and set it on the fresh mound of dirt. "You said I'd be watching you," he whispered. Guess you were right. The others left him there. He stayed until the sun began to dip and shadows stretched long across the prairie. He sat against the tree, gun belt beside him, her shawl wrapped around his shoulders like a memory that refused to die. The town tried to move on. The marshal left 2 days later, saying little except that the report would read justified shooting. But the townsfolk knew better. They'd seen the way Cole looked at her. They'd heard the things a man only says when he's already lost. Within a week, the new sheriff arrived, a younger man, all sharp edges and ambition. He found Cole's office empty, desk cleared, walls bare except for a single sheet of paper pinned above the door. It said, "The law's meant to protect what's good. I just learned it can't protect what's beautiful." No one saw Cole leave Ash Hollow. Some said he rode south toward Mexico. Others swore they saw him at the old railway junction, waiting for a train that never came. The truth was simpler and sadder. He stayed close, out beyond the ridge where the town faded into prairie near the grave by the creek. Years passed. The Copper Star closed its doors. The piano man left for Abilene, the preacher died, and the streets turned to dust. Folks stopped talking about the woman in red and the sheriff who broke his own code for love. But every now and then, when the wind blew right, travelers said they heard singing, soft, sweet, and aching, drifting from the cottonwoods. They said if you followed it, you'd find a cabin half fallen into the ground. Inside, a man with a graying beard and eyes that had seen too much would pour you whiskey, ask where you came from, and then, when you were about to leave, he'd say quietly, "Tell me, you ever lose someone you can still smell in the rain?" If you nodded, he'd smile, just a little, and look out toward the creek. Then you understand. And as you rode away, you might see him kneel by the water's edge, placing a single red rose where the grass still grew thick. He'd talk to her, not with grief anymore, but with the soft patience of a man who's learned that love don't die. It just changes shape. On quiet nights, when the stars hung low and the moonlight washed the town in silver, he'd sit on the porch and hum the tune she used to sing, that old river song that once filled the saloon. He'd hum until the coyotes answered, until his eyes grew heavy, until sleep came to carry him somewhere. She waited smiling, in that place beyond the dust. They buried him years later beside her under the same cottonwood tree. No priest, no crowd, just 2 graves facing the river and a sheriff's badge, rusted and bent, lying between them. Time wore the names off their markers, but the story stayed. Parents told it in whispers to children who didn't understand yet why the saddest stories are sometimes the truest ones. And when those children grew old and passed through Ash Hollow again, they still swore the wind carried her laughter, soft, teasing, wild, through the broken streets. The town never really recovered from them. Some said Ash Hollow was cursed. Others said it was blessed, a place where love burned too bright for the world to bear. But for those who stood at the edge of the creek and listened close, it wasn't hard to hear her voice still, the whisper of Lila May, singing through the dust, and the memory of a lawman who loved her more than the world would allow. And when the wind shifted just right, the old cottonwood would creak as if bowing to the past, as if it remembered too, because some loves act like ghosts in dust and never leave. They just wait for the next sunset to remind the world they were real.